Well, Father Matt asked me to talk about friendship tonight, specifically the importance of the type of friends you have, and how that really affects us far more than we know. Like when you guys think about what you value, like what you think is important, what you pursue, how you spend your time, what you think is good, so much of that comes from who you have spent your time with over the last 5, 10, 15 years. It's hard to really understand how influential the people we hang around with are on us. And it's not that you have to get rid of, you can only be friends with a few and you got to get rid of all your friends or anything like that. But it's about being intentional. It's about understanding what forms the way you think, and then how people in your life are influencing you in that way. Does that make sense? Okay. It's kind of like what's easy for us to understand is if I drink like water with toxins in it, or if I eat food that has toxins in it, or if I'm smelling air that has toxins in it, what's going to happen to my body? It's going to become toxic, right? It's very easy for us to make that connection, like what I eat, what I drink, what I breathe, what I put into my body affects my body. But for some reason, we kind of don't make the connections all the time with our mind. And the way you act is directly connected to how you think. Does that make sense? Like, I know you really don't need me to tell you that, you know that, but we need to be reminded that our actions are totally tethered to our beliefs and tethered to how we think, and that is incredibly affected by the people we spend time with. How about social media? Does social media affect the way you guys think? Hopefully you're all going, of course it does. Like, hopefully you know that. That's a whole nother talk for another night, probably. But what I wanted to do tonight was make a connection for you guys with an Old Testament story, an Old Testament narrative, that I want you as men to be able to always be able to insert yourself into that story. Like when you hear parts of this narrative read in Mass. When you study Scripture on your own, if you're in a small group, if you're in a Bible study, I want you to be able to know this narrative, and obviously we can't do all of that tonight, but I want to tee it up for you in a way where you can say, okay, yeah, I see myself in that. And I want you to be able to draw, there's lots of truth you can draw out of it. In particular, you can draw what we're talking about tonight, who you spend time with, who you connect yourself to. So everyone in here probably has a favorite movie. And if you're kind of weird like me, you've probably seen that movie more than 10 times. Let's leave it at that. Let's not embarrass ourselves by saying we've seen it more than that. But here's the thing, like if you turned on the TV and that movie was on, it wouldn't matter where it is in the movie. 5 minutes in, 5 minutes to go. Halfway through, you immediately like, oh, I know exactly what's going on in this story. I know what happened leading up to this. I know what just happened. I know what's getting ready to happen. Like I know the story, right? And I want to challenge you men to know this Old Testament narrative in that way. And it'll take you time, but you can do it. Your mind is capable of it. A lot of times people think, oh, I can't understand the Bible. I'm not a theologian. I didn't go to seminary. Trust me, you can understand this story. And let me back up. Let me just set this story up in this way. And let me remind you guys of something. God created you with the thought, with the plan, that you would be able to experience perfect friendship with God and with everybody else. He created human beings with the thought that, and actually with the ability, like Adam and Eve had the ability to love God perfectly, experience God's love perfectly, and then love one another perfectly. And God's plan for humanity is that we would be one big, happy family that loves one another perfectly. Does that sound good? That sounds great. All of our problems as human beings stems from the fact that we've lost our ability to do that. We're no longer able to love one another the way we should. And it's not a matter of choice. It's not a matter of, all right, guys, let's do it. Let's just go love one another perfectly now. We're not capable of it anymore. So all things Catholic, our Catholic faith, everything the church offers us, it's all tethered back to God's desire to restore in you your ability to love like He does. Okay? So now, He does this through His Son, Jesus Christ, through the church. But how did we get to Jesus Christ in the church? That's that Old Testament narrative of how God brought about this thing we call Catholicism. So you guys have heard of Abraham, right? God goes to Abraham and says, I'm going to make a covenant with you. He tells Abraham, you're going to have a bunch of kids. You're going to have a ton of descendants. Not only that, but your descendants are going to become a great nation. They're going to become a dynasty. And through your descendants, all of the families in the world are going to be blessed. Your descendants are going to become a worldwide blessing. They're going to become a blessing to the entire world. Because ultimately, God Himself becomes a human being into this family. And it's through Judaism that our faith unfolds. Okay? So I want you to think of yourselves as the nation of Israel. Right? Abraham is the father of Isaac. He's the father of Jacob. God changes Jacob's name to Israel. Israel has a bunch of sons. They end up in Egypt. Right? The descendants of Israel. I want you to be able to study the Old Testament narrative of the nation of Israel and to be able to see yourself as that nation. You are called to be a worldwide blessing. You are called to be a light to the nations. You are called to be someone that lives his life in such a way while other people can see the truth of God in you without you even saying it. So when God brings the people out of Egypt, He brings them to the promised land. And you guys might remember this story. They come right up to the promised land. They send in the 12 spies. The 12 spies say the land is amazing. Who knows what it's filled with? It's filled with what? Do you remember?
Milk and honey.
Who said that? What'd you say?
Milk and honey.
It's filled with milk and honey. Which, I don't get that excited about milk and honey, but that's a big deal back then. That was like, saying it's filled with, In-N-Out burgers and golf courses or something like that. You know what I mean? Something we can relate to. But do they take the land? What ends up happening? Do you remember? They send in the spies and they're like, it's great, but they say, you know what? It's filled with giants. It's filled with these warriors. And there's no way we can win. There's no way we can beat these people. And they say, let's just go back to slavery. Let's just go back to Egypt. Because we don't want to fight. We're too afraid. And it's okay to admit as a man, that's going to be your mindset sometimes. Sometimes you're going to go, I'm not up for this. This is too big for me. I can't do this. I'm just going to go back to slavery. But God tells them, you're not going back to slavery. And if you're not willing to fight, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to wander in the desert for 40 years, and when you're all dead, I'll start over with your kids. And that's what happens. So a lot of times people think, oh, God had them wander in the desert for 40 years, or it was a 40-year trip. No. They died in the desert because they were unwilling to be courageous. They were unwilling to have faith in God. The next generation, led by Joshua, they do take over the land. And this is the point I was getting to. God tells them this. He says, listen, I'm paraphrasing. God didn't really speak like this. But God says to them, hey, listen, this land is filled with pagans. It's filled with people who are so corrupt and so immoral that they kill their own babies and sacrifice the demons. They live a life of murder, of rape, of injustice. And I'm going to push them out of the land and give the land to you. But you can't have anything to do with them. You can't be friends with them. You can't marry their daughters. You cannot yoke yourself to them, because if you do, you're going to start thinking like they do. You're going to start valuing what they value. You're going to start pursuing what they pursue. And what God says, He's like, they're going to become a snare to you. They're going to entrap you and ensnare you, and they're going to turn you away from me. And why is that such a problem? What was their mission? Their mission, ultimately, God is saying, your mission is to reveal the truth to the world about me. And little did they realize that God Himself was going to become a human being and join them and accomplish His work of redemption. Like, there was a lot riding on this. It wasn't like the Israelites could say, hey, we're God's chosen people. We have a special relationship with Him. We can just kind of live however we want. No, they had a mission. They had a responsibility. And when you get to understand this narrative, you'll see they never got that. Everything was about them. Them being comfortable. Them not being hungry. Them not being thirsty. Them not feeling unsafe. Throughout the narrative, they say, it would be better for us if we could do this. It would be better for us if we could go back to Egypt. They were always looking to do what was best for them. And as men, that cannot be our paradigm. We can't... Authentic masculinity does not ask, what's in this for me? How do I serve myself? How do I get what I want? Authentic masculinity is about a giving of self, a sacrifice, being willing to serve, being courageous enough to overcome evil with good. And you think about your favorite movies, I bet a lot of them have that hero that overcomes evil. The hero that is willing to put himself on the line for others. Why are you attracted to that? Why do we like that narrative? Because there's something within us that says, I want to be like that. I want to be that guy. And so, like the nation of Israel, you have a mission in your life that goes so far beyond what you've even dreamt yet. The greatness that you are called to goes so far beyond probably what you've allowed yourself to image in your mind. The nation of Israel could not look thousands of years into the future and understand how God was going to become a human being through them and how the Catholic faith was going to unfold from the Jewish faith. But their mission and their obedience to God, it wasn't about them. It was about this promise God said to Abraham that through your descendants, all the families of the world are going to be blessed. And so as men, you're called to be a blessing. You're called to be a gift to other people. So, the Israelites, they didn't listen to God when it came to the pagans. They hung out with the pagans. They partied with the pagans. They married the pagans. And ultimately, it led to their downfall. And there was a cycle of it throughout the Old Testament, a cycle of them falling into sin with the pagans, being conquered by their enemies and going into slavery, crying out to God for help, God responding and helping them and restoring them and giving them peace, only to have them do it again, over and over and over. So when you're sitting in Mass and you hear a reading from the prophet Isaiah, a reading from the prophet Amos, the reading from the prophet Jeremiah, it is God warning the people, turn away from the route you're going because of how you are yoking yourself with pagans. You see where I'm going with this? I'm not saying your friends are all pagan. That's not what I mean. Don't go up to your buddy and go, dude, you're a pagan, I can't hang with you anymore. But you have to understand the influence the people in your life are playing. And you have to be intentional with who you spend your time with and how you spend your time with them. You have to be intentional about it, right? It's something that you're going to have to make decisions on in your life. Ultimately with the Israelites, they fall so far from their mission. They go into a civil war. And of the 12 tribes, you have 10 in the north, 2 in the south. The 10 in the north get completely wiped out. They're permanently gone. Do you know that? Like, there are still Jewish people, not from the northern tribes. Those 10 have been completely wiped out by the Assyrians in about 722 BC. And one of the biggest issues that, or one of the biggest mistakes that they made is when they cut themselves off from the south, they said, we don't need to go to the temple to worship. We'll worship how we want. And they set up pagan altars. And they lived a very pagan lifestyle. And when you read scripture, when you read the narratives of this, you think, well, that's kind of weird. So they did a bunch of pagan rituals and things like that. I would never do that. Like, I would never worship a false god. And what I want to challenge you men to consider is that we all worship false gods, whether we identify them or not. It's very easy to worship at the altar of popularity, to worship at the altar of making money, pursuing wealth, pursuing pleasure. Okay? And so I'm up here standing before you saying, I worship false gods. I'm influenced by paganism, quote unquote. You see what I mean? It's a constant, that's the journey of the spiritual life. And this is why having friends who can help you in your spiritual life is so important. Okay? It's something I want to challenge you guys to pray for you to ask God, bring other men into my life who can be the kind of friend I need. Help me to meet those guys. Ask God to help you become the kind of man that can help other men in their walk. So I want you to be intentional in 3 ways with your relationships. Okay? There are some friends you might have right now that you may need to prayerfully consider disassociating yourself with. It's possible. And I've had to do that in my own life, where I realized these guys are taking me down a path I don't want to go. And they're funny, and they're successful, and I like hanging around them. But they're taking me down a path I don't want to go, and I've had to disassociate myself with people. And you don't tell them, hey, we're not disassociated. Life has you have a way of just not hanging out. And your relationships will not grow because you're not watering it, you're not feeding it. And I say prayerfully discern that. Just because someone's not Catholic or they're not Christian, that doesn't mean to disassociate with them. I'm saying, like, if someone is offering you drugs, if someone is saying, hey, let's go watch pornography together, if someone is like really taking you down a path where every time you're with them, all they do is talk about perverted things or disordered things, you got to ask yourself, why am I hanging out with this person? You might have to disassociate. Most of the people you hang out with, you're going to have limited association with. You see them here or there. You have class, study group, you live in the same dorm. But you're like, you know what, this is a person I can be friendly with, but I need to have limited association with this person. This is probably not someone I can spend the majority of my leisure time with. And I have friends like that. I have a lot of guys like that. But this is what's really important as well. There are some guys you meet, you need to have expanded association with them. You need to be with them as often as you can in a healthy way because of how they think, because of what they value, because of how you know they can help you in your life. And with that in mind, what I want to challenge you with is, do you have a vision? What is the vision you have for your life? You know, you guys are young. You're a step ahead of the game because you're in college. You know, most dudes don't go to college. You know that? Did you know that? Most guys do not go to college. Most guys who start college do not finish. You want to know why? College is hard. It's not easy, is it? It's hard. You're paying a price. But you have to think, where do I want to be in 5 years? What do I want to be doing in 10 years? What's the vision for my life? You don't have to be freaked out if you don't know the answer to that. I was an exercise physiology major. And I've sold life insurance, and now I'm a Catholic speaker. You know what I mean? I was an exercise physiology major. That's what I graduated in. I thought, yeah, I'm going to do sports medicine. I got out of that, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go into sales. I sold insurance for 17 years. I still sell insurance. And then I was an anti-Catholic for most of my life, and then I became Catholic and was like, wow, I want to become a professional Catholic. I want to go pro. So God has a plan for your life. You're not a puppet on a string, but God has a plan for your life. God wants you to be a blessing to everyone you meet. He wants you to bring life to everyone you meet. There are some things that can seriously jeopardize that mission. And you guys already know what a lot of those are. But you need to be able to identify what are the threats to my future, and who are the guys that I hang around with that might be taking me down a path that jeopardizes my future. So every single one of you in here is called to fatherhood. Do you know that? Not necessarily physically. Some of you may not be called to marriage. It doesn't matter if you're called to marriage or not. Every man is called to be a father. Do you know what I mean by that? To bring life to people. To provide, to help people get what they need. Now you think of what I do as a father. I provide for my kids. I provide for them in every way. I provide, I protect. And through God's amazing plan, I brought them life. Not apart from God, of course, but I played a major role. I brought them life. Father Dan, the ministerial priests, they are our spiritual fathers. They nourish us, they bring us life, they bring us protection. And you guys are called to do that. So you have a fatherly role. And you have to start thinking in that way. Now, most of you guys are probably going to be the leader in that aspect of most of the men in your life. Most of the other 18, 19, 20, 20-year-old dudes that you hang around with aren't thinking on the level you're thinking. Which is why you guys need each other. Which is why hopefully you guys are connected in small groups and doing things because you're on the same page with each other. So think about that. I want you to be thinking, are there people I need to disassociate with? Are there people that I just got to keep my association with them limited? And then who are the very few people that I need to stay connected to? So I probably have 4 guys in my life. They're all about 10 years older than me. They're incredibly successful in business. They're very successful in their domestic life and their family life. They think at a very high level in a lot of ways. They're smart with business. They're smart just in life. And I intentionally connect with those guys throughout the year. One of them I probably talk to a few times a month. Another guy, I only see him a few times a year. But I would challenge you to do that. Just have that on your radar. Be open to God bringing men into your life where you go, man, I need to buy this dude a cup of coffee. I need to just take this guy out to lunch and just have him tell me how he got from A to B. Right? Authentic masculinity, really true fatherhood, a true giving of yourself, like really what masculinity truly is. That's only going to come to you from other men who know it and live it. You can't read about it. I mean, you can and you should, but a woman can't transfer that to you. You need to see other men, how they live their lives. And that's why friendship is so important. So you're created for relationship. God is restoring at every level. And you need to make sure that you have high quality men in your life who are true friends, who have a vision for their life that includes greatness. Time goes by quick when you're up here doing the talking. I know when you're sitting there, it's like, come on, dude, let's go. Do you guys have any questions or comments or? Yeah, man.
So I like what you're saying about like being intentional with his friends and such. Do you have any like specific tips for actually being more intentional? Because I find myself having like I have like a group of really good friends, but like sometimes I just struggle with like finding time to like hang out or something. And I don't know that it's necessarily like I just can't do it. It seems like sometimes it's just like a lack of motivation or something like that.
Well, I mean, you have to have a balance. I mean, you probably have friends and you hang out with them. But I will say this, you have to take risk. You have to put yourself out there and not be afraid to say, hey man, you want to go do this? You want to hang out? All the guys I hang out with, professionals, married, kids, super busy. When I ask them to hang out, you know what I usually hear? I can't, man. I can't do it tonight. Because I'm a spur of the moment, dude. I'm like, hey, you want to grab beer tonight? You want to smoke a cigar tonight? Do you want to watch this game tonight? What are you doing tomorrow? And like, I'm usually told I can't. I don't take that personal. I know they're not avoiding me, because I do the same thing when people ask me. I'm like, I just can't do it tonight. It's not like the college life, where like class ended at 2, and you have the rest of the day, right? Enjoy that now. But you got to take risk. And guess what? Not everyone's going to want to hang out with you. No big deal. Not every guy is your guy. And you're not, you know, like you got to let it happen organically. You know what I mean? And it's okay if you know, you may want to be friends. It's going to happen in life. You're like, man, I dig hanging out with this guy, but he doesn't really seem to, you know, we don't really hit it off as friends from his end. That happens to everybody. Don't worry about that. But be proactive. And don't be lazy about it. At least you're recognizing that. And while I'm thinking of it, if I get in front of a group of young men, I'm remiss if I don't say that one of the absolute biggest threats to you as a man, one of the biggest threats to your mind, how you think, what you think of yourself, what you think of others, what you think of women and marriage and sex, is going to get perverted and disordered by pornography. I get pornography. I get why when we watch it, our brains say we should keep doing this. There are chemical reactions in your brain that hit the pleasure center where you're like, I can do this all day. So you're normal if you enjoy it. The Catholic Church actually tells us, and you can read this in the Catechism, that a lack of chastity, which pornography destroys chastity, a lack of chastity prevents, it inhibits your affectivity, your ability to make friendships, your ability to just authentically give of yourself to another person and share who you are with another person. So I have to take just a minute to tell you guys, you have to do everything possible to make sure that is out of your life. And you have to believe 100% that you can have it out of your life completely. Okay? St. Mary, I developed a web page on our website at St. Mary Magdalene. It's called Fight Porn. You just go to stmarymagdalene.org in Gilbert. There's a Fight Porn website or web page on there. I want all of you guys to hit it and read it. And the last thing I'll say, and I know I sound like an old man, do not play video games by yourself. If you want to hang out with your buddies and play some video games, go ahead. If you are playing video games by yourself, I'm just going to challenge you right now. That's not what men do. Don't do it. I sound really old. I sound like an old dude. I can't explain why right now. I don't have enough time. But those are the practical things I want to challenge you with. Fight pornography like everything in your life depends on it. Because honestly, it does. Don't play video games by yourself. And be intentional about being a great friend and meeting great friends. Rock and roll.
Thanks, Chris.
Got it.
I just want to share a little bit too, as you were talking about, like, you know, sometimes we have to disassociate ourselves from certain, like, bad influences in our lives. So a lot of you know, like, I was a swimmer in college, and so, like, immediately when I got to college, my 25 best friends were my teammates. Do you want to know how many of them I talked to today? 0. They were drinking buddies. And that was pretty much it. We'd work out together and we would drink together. That was about it. And I remember, like, as I started to grow more in my faith, I was like, man, I don't like waking up with a headache in the morning. You know, like, I don't like being out till like 2 a.m. and then trying to go to mass in the morning. And like, it is what it is, right? But it's like, I noticed that, like, as I started to recognize those things where I'm like, I really don't like this, and we can like laugh and tell jokes and watch like stupid YouTube videos, but it's like, but I just remember really thinking like, there's no way that this is what I was made for. Like there's no way that I was made just to like work out 20 hours a week, like go to class, drink a ton on the weekends. I was like, this can't be it. And when I actually when I started to pull away, like none of my teammates followed me. It was kind of like lonely sometimes, because I'd be like sitting by myself on like a Saturday evening, and I'm like, Lord, are you sure? But it was better because like even though there was a time like of suffering where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I remember we got back from a swim meet one like Friday night or something at like 9 p.m. And I was like, I guess I'll go to the Adoration Chapel. And on the way there, I ran into this guy on the wrestling team. And I knew he was like Christian, but not Catholic. I just invited him to the Adoration Chapel with me. He's like, yes. He's like, I've just been having a really hard time. And so I was like, this is what you do when you go in, like, sign the cross, genuflect and everything. But it was good. It was just like, okay, Lord, like, I don't, like, he never, like, converted as far as I know or anything. But it's like, but it's okay, like, the Lord's able to use all that stuff. And I remember, too, like, when I got to seminary, I'd gone there, and all these priests were like, you're going to make the best friends of your life. And I got there, and I was like, these guys? It's like, what is this, you know? And you kind of realize in the process of that, you're like, maybe they're not the problem. Like, maybe I'm the problem. Like, maybe I'm the one who the Lord still needs to form a little bit. And like, guys from that class, they're some of my best friends today. Like, all my best friends I've met in seminary. And I'm not, this isn't like some plug for seminary or anything, but it is to say that like when we try to like, when we pay attention to those things that tell us like, this isn't good for me, when we pay attention like, okay, Lord, maybe you're calling me to something deeper to go out, the Lord's going to respond, but we have to be willing to be corrected, we have to be willing to change. And I like what Chris says about like, pornography can ruin your life. And don't be afraid to make a drastic decision. Don't be afraid to cut something out of your life in a radical way. Like, undoubtedly, you'll feel like you're suffering a little bit. But it's for a little while. And everyone is capable of being free of pornography. Like, we don't have to say that, like, this is my cross that I just have to carry. Sin is never a cross, okay? And everyone is able to be free of it. But it does mean like making big decisions. It does mean like being willing to say no in a radical way. And so I just encourage you, like, don't be afraid of that. Be willing to take all of that to prayer, to share it with the Lord, the one who like truly gives life. So that's what I have to add. Love it, thanks. I think we'll look for that. We have about 10 minutes before we go back and join up with the girls. So I'd invite you maybe just to like turn around, maybe in groups of like 4 or 5 or something, and maybe just share maybe something that struck you from the talk. Maybe if you have a resolution, or maybe there's somewhere that the Lord's calling you. But don't be afraid either. It doesn't have to be in your small group, but to ask your own friends to like help you to grow, to walk with you, but hold you accountable.
And if you don't have a small group and you want a small group,
yeah, exactly.
Eric and I know most of the dates for the guys here that have openings in theirs.
If you're not in a small group, if you want to join a Bible study, talk to Josh. Just a great way to get plugged in. I'll give you like a couple minute warning when we're ready to go back in. But for now, you're going to have to turn around and